What can I do about disruptive students on the one hand, and then students who opt out of the activity that's been assigned to them on the other hand? Two very different questions, two very different answers. Disruptive students aren't really something that I've encountered in my experience in large or small classrooms that have been taught in this manner. And if you think about it, it's like thinking that in a lecture classroom, somebody is going to just stand up and say, all right, we're done with this, come on group, and then, some subset of the students would just walk out with that person. It's unlikely. If they came to the classroom in the first place, it's unlikely that they're going to actually try to actively undermine what's going on in the classroom. But if one of these things happens to occur, if one of the people does start being disruptive in class, then typical classroom management is the most straightforward answer to the question. If a student does start disrupting the activities of other people in the class, ask that student to move to the side or just speak with the student. You're forming relationships with these people, so it's unlikely that you're not going to be able to just say, hey, could we please focus on this? But if worse comes to worse, you're probably in your right to ask the student to leave the class for the day and then address that later. There are a lot of people trying to learn at the same time. Having one student undermine that would not be worthwhile. The other question is, what about students who just refuse to participate at all? They've opted out of the group activity of some sort. Are they just sitting there silently, or they don't even form up into groups when they're asked to do so and say, I don't want to be in a group today? Well, the interesting thing about this, going back to the lecture situation, is when you're lecturing, there are probably students like that. No offense to your lecture style, but it's possible that there are people who aren't engaged in the lecture. We have no idea who they are, though. It's very difficult to tease apart the people who are surreptitiously listening to an iPod from the people who are actually paying attention in class. But here, when we're engaged in these sorts of things, it's very clear when someone's sitting apart from a group, or there's one person who you notice never speaks during one of the group activities, to tell the people who are disengaged. And so going up, and the best tool to use here is to speak with them, to say, all right, do you have any questions or concerns? Is there something we can do? They have a person in their group, it may even be them, problematically, but they have a person in their group who's been tasked with bringing their opinion into the discussion. So letting that process play out, and going and helping scaffold and foster that, is probably the best way to do it. But again, if push comes to shove and they say, no, I really don't want to participate in this task at all, I don't want to form up with a group, for whatever reason, viable or otherwise, then we can still allow that student to engage in the same sort of critical and creative thought. It won't be in a group context, but so be it. And so go scaffold that. Give them the equipment that they need to respond to the questions, make sure that their questions are answered and they have the declarative knowledge that they need for it, and work with that individual to work on the same sorts of questions, just not in a group environment. That way, even the students who are just sitting on their own, whom we notice time and time again, we can get pulled back into at least the point of the greatest point of the questions that we're asking them, to think creatively and think critically.